Hey, what's up everybody? BDFFORTYFOUR coming at you with another video. Alright, so as promised, I'm going to do a mock draft here for everyone. And I've done this, 3 years in a row now, maybe 4, lost count. But this one I was less sure about than I did the last couple of years, to be honest with you. Although I did as much homework as I wanted to do to become as comfortable with these players, that wasn't a problem. In their landing spots, that wasn't the problem. It was more so about the team's needs versus who I think the better players are. And I found myself really running into a snag because you start seeing the teams have certain quote-unquote needs, although those things can be fluctuated a lot. And then you start predicting if they draft for need or if they draft the best player. And then the idea of whether or not these are the best players, there's a lot of variance to it, in my opinion. A lot of different swings about how people view teams you can't really predict. And I'm not an insider, so I haven't heard a lot. And there's some weird stuff going on with one of the key guys in the top of the draft. So it just shook up for me to not really have a whole lot of certainty about my picks here. In other words, I could do this mock draft right now and the board could shake up really quickly. Every time I do a mock draft, it's a different result. And I try to keep the same idea in mind. Draft for team need based on my understanding of the team's situation currently or what could ultimately take place going forward if certain things shake out that are being rumored. So that's my attitude. I didn't go about this like it's a draft board. I didn't pick my favorite players necessarily in the order that I would take them. I was thinking of the team's needs as a GM, and that proved to be extremely difficult, believe it or not, in this draft. So without further ado, let's get into it, man. The first overall pick in this year's draft will definitely be Cooper Flagg. I did no thinking about that. Cooper Flagg, small forward out of Duke, 6'9", do everything man. Should be a top 50 player in the league probably within the next 3 months of his career getting started. He is going to prove himself to be one of the best players. He went to the Dallas Mavericks. That's pretty much a foregone conclusion unless something unprecedented happens, for which I do not expect. Cooper Flagg will be the guy that takes the flag from Luka Doncic, who's now with my Los Angeles Lakers. And Dallas has a bright future and a whole lot of shot blocking. This is going to be a superstar. There's no question about his floor being all-star. Ceiling, Hall of Famer, period. Next up is San Antonio Spurs with the second overall selection. I went with Dylan Harper, point guard, shooting guard combination, 6'6", out of Rutgers. Dylan Harper is the son of Ron Harper, champion with the Bulls and with the Lakers, had some fantastic years with the Cavs and also the Clippers. Dylan Harper is going to get his career started with the Spurs. That's almost a foregone conclusion as well, unless some trades happen, which I actually am hearing about. Maybe the Philadelphia 76ers swapping picks with the Spurs. I don't think the Spurs should do that. I don't expect they will do that. But if for some reason it is traded, I still expect Dylan Harper to be the second overall pick, no matter where it goes. So Dylan Harper is just a guy, ambidextrous, fast-paced, has some good intangibles on the defensive end, but some great intangibles on the offensive end. Just a really, really fantastic overall prospect at the guard spot. And, he's in a tier underneath Flagg, but in a tier of his own after that. I think this is a two-player draft for the most part as it pertains to the all-star and superstar level guys. Cooper and Dylan are the ones that are pretty much set in stone to go 1 and 2, no matter if the pick is traded or not. So yeah, the number 3 overall selection on my mock draft will be Ace Bailey. I understand that there's a damn good chance that he does not get drafted 3rd overall, or there's a damn good chance that pick gets traded and maybe someone selects something different, because I think there's some variance there to whether or not Ace Bailey is the 3rd overall selection on everyone's big board. But when I look at the needs of the Philadelphia 76ers, even though he canceled as of yesterday when I recorded this, his workout with the Sixers, I still look at the needs of the Sixers and I say he fits the needs of the Sixers a bit more than some of the other prospects underneath him. Now, it could be tricky if you're bringing in a young guy that doesn't want to be there, but he's a small forward, 6'10", fantastic shooter, shot maker, explosive player, can offensive rebound pretty well, His defense is a work in progress, but he does have some great tools and explosiveness that shows up on the defensive end. I like Ace Bailey so long as I can give him the rope to develop, and am not asking for him to literally do anything right away because of the need for him to develop. His handle is not very good. He's not particularly a great passer or floor general or anything like that. He doesn't have great vision, and he does tend to take some bad shots, as I like to say. A tough shot maker, bad shot taker. He's one of those type of people, and I would have some hesitancy to bring him into a lot of situations. But Philadelphia, a team that needs young talent, a team that has some vets in place that could help him if they keep Paul George. I don't know if they're going to trade him or not, but if they keep Paul George, I'd like a guy like Ace Bailey playing behind Paul George, learning how to utilize his body and his strength in ways that a guy like Paul George can teach him. There are worse places in this draft for Ace Bailey to land. And I can't think of too many great ones in his range. So I'm just going to take him for the betterment of the Philadelphia 76ers need for size, which he provides, youth, which he provides, and athleticism and speed, for which he provides. Philly is deficient in all of those areas. And if I take somebody else, I'm giving up a lot in the height department, and that's really where I draw the line for myself in regards to the Sixers. I cannot bring them a small player. I can't. I've been listening to too many Sixers podcasters complain about the lack of speed, athleticism, and height on their team, outside of obviously Joel Embiid, who we have no idea when we'll see him again. Give me Ace Bailey, and we'll figure out the rest. But I don't expect him to do much, and that's a tough thing, given the fact that the Philadelphia 76ers really could best utilize that asset a different way. But at the end of the day, you got to take the best prospect if you're going to use the pick, and the most valuable prospect if you're going to use the pick. And I think overall, most people will have Ace Bailey third on their draft board. So if I'm going to trade the pick, I'll probably be best to have Ace Bailey in place if it's going to be used and traded afterward, in my opinion. But Ace is doing a lot to tank his draft stock, and I think he wants to go somewhere else. So I think it's a very good chance this does not happen. But if I'm in control of the Philadelphia 76ers as of right now, I'm still taking Ace Bailey, and we'll just figure out the particulars right after that. We'll trade him after that if that's what it comes down to. Or we'll trade the pick first, and none of this is even relevant. So that's really what it is, man. I think it's a good chance it doesn't happen, but I'm taking Ace at 3. All right, the next guy I'm taking, this one I didn't have to think about at all. VJ Edgecombe to the Charlotte Hornets. I think it makes sense. He provides some defensive intangibles, an extremely elite athlete, explosive 6'5", out of Baylor. Freshman, one-and-done guy, another one-and-done guy. And, this is a shooting guard. I think he can play some small forward as well in a lot of situations. They have a lot of things out there, but I think what they've been putting together in Charlotte that has been kind of a underlying secret is that they've been trying to look for defensive players at the power forward and the wing spot. I saw them bring in a Kogi. I saw them bring in Grant Williams. You see that they held on to Miles Bridges. I think this is a guy who can complement them by putting together some very good defensive opportunities, and then of course can score. Him and Miles Bridges running the floor, catching lobs from LaMelo Ball. I think it's a no-brainer. You love having VJ Edgecombe on paper, and I think he's going to translate to being a high-level starter for them someday, and early on probably a six-man level player. He still has some things to work on, of course, but the explosiveness and the speed, the athleticism, and the ability to electrify a crowd, I just think that you're putting together something that could be enormously entertaining in Charlotte. And I think that that's exactly what you need when you have a small market team. You put Bridges together, you put LaMelo together, you took Brandon Miller, and now you bring in VJ Edgecombe. You can start seeing them piecing together a team that is fun to watch. I don't know how much they're going to be able to win, but you're starting to pile on some very exciting talent, and you're putting together yet another fantastic asset for which, if you pair together with the other stuff you have, can be really valuable in the trade market. So that's another reason why I'm very comfortable taking VJ Edgecombe. I just think he's going to be a very fun player to have in Charlotte that can be very valuable for them as well. All right, number 5. This is where it gets tricky for me because I don't follow the consensus here. I went with Noah Asingé at the 5th overall pick with the Utah Jazz. Noah Asingé is not considered the 5th overall best prospect in this class. In fact, I don't think I've seen anybody take him 5th at all but me. But I'm taking him 5th here because if I'm the Utah Jazz, there's some things I need to address. And one of them is my defense. And defensively, Noah Osenga shows me that he has some very good, first of all, tools. His long arms. He's like 7'2" wingspan or something like that. 6'8" in height. Going to continue to grow. The thing about Noah Osenga is, like Ace Bailey, you're going to need maybe a year or two before he's actually a productive piece. And the thing about the Utah Jazz, when you look at their roster, they have young players at every position and some vets in some key positions that are likely going to be gone within a year or two. So my thing is, this is a situation where you can afford to bring a home run-like guy who has all these tools, very valuable in the league, come out of France. You know how that is when you have small forwards from France with long arms that play defense. It just becomes a situation where this is a very valuable piece. And because he has such a high upside, one of the highest upsides in this draft, one has to wonder if it makes sense, if you're the Utah Jazz, who didn't win the lottery and was hoping to be able to get the guy with the highest upside who can fill a need in a way to help you defensively in ways that maybe the other prospects in this range don't necessarily help you. Now, I know the Utah Jazz, there's a couple areas you can go with the Jazz in regards to this pick. You could have went Trey Johnson, which I think a lot of people expect for them to do. But I look at their guard situation, I said, we just drafted 2 guards back-to-back last year, and they've played very well. Plus, I got, another guard to consider that I took in the lottery last year, J-Dub's brother, Cody Williams. He's also in the wing. Noah Osenga fits that lineup. Got the 2 point guards there. Got Noah Osenga. I got my center in place. Maybe you can try to get another center with one of your later picks. But for me, it's like I don't need another guard. I don't need to bring to a guard-locked situation yet another guard to have in rotation. I just think that it gets a little redundant. I don't know what's going to happen with Jordan Clarkson. I don't know what's going to happen with Colin Sexton. But you got plenty of guards if you're this basketball team. So for me, without giving too much thought to it, I just said, look, give me the wing that I can have, that I can afford to wait on, that has the ridiculous upside, the long arms, and somebody who can start to form the pattern of improving our defense. Since the Utah Jazz are not a good defensive team, but have all the ability in the world to score. You got Markkanen in your place. You got all these different guys that can score the ball, but nobody plays any damn defense. So that was my thinking. I could have went a different direction, but I wanted to swing for the fences. Since we didn't win the lottery, let me get the guy with the highest upside, in my opinion, who's not going to create a logjam of a bunch of 22-year-olds. So for me, that was Noah Osenga. So I want to do a little more talking about the Jazz, but I'm going to move on here. But you guys get the point. That was my thinking when making this pick. And it wouldn't surprise me at all if the Utah Jazz do that. I hear they may be interested in trying to get Ace Bailey. If you can't get Ace Bailey and you want that type of player, as far as length and height, Noah Osenga is probably the next best thing. And even though he's 6'8" right now, he has one of them little bodies that are likely going to continue to grow. He's extremely young. He'll probably end up 6'10" before it's over with anyway. So I'm taking Noah Osenga, number 5 for the Utah Jazz. All right, next up. This is where Trey Johnson goes, man. Number 6 overall pick to the Washington Wizards. As I looked at their team, they could use a lot of things. But for me, I just felt that Trey Johnson's a little too valuable to let slip in this draft. Too many teams like him too much for you to let him slip past 6 if you're Washington. If you don't love him in your situation, you can trade him. But I don't think that they hate him in that situation either. You got a guy like Jordan Poole on a massive contract. You're probably going to move him. He replaces Jordan Poole. You also have Bub Carrington, who you picked up last year. You got Keyshawn George, who's been able to stretch the floor for you, shows that he can really play. He's going to have a nice upside going forward. You picked up Alex Sarr last year. And then you have some guards at your out there that you're probably going to move on from. I hear they're interested in moving on from Marcus Smart. I know this is going to be an expiring year for Chris Middleton, of whom they just picked up, who will likely be the guy that they have kind of to rally around and make things happen. What could they use? Well, if you're going to move on from some guards and you have a bunch of young players at other positions, why not go for maybe the best overall player available, who's a shooting guard, who's going to be able to get buckets by the ton? So my thinking was, it doesn't require too much thought for me. There are other ways I could go. Last year, you dropped you on the second overall pick, you took Alex Sarr, who's going to block some shots. Maybe you pair up a guy like Kamen Malawach with him and then just be one of the best shot blocking teams in the East. But my thing is, now you have a spacing issue since I don't trust Alex Sarr to shoot the shot, nor Colin Malowatch to hit the shot either. So you have spacing issues. Maybe you don't get the most out of those guys if you pair them together. Not the greatest fit. Could have went with a guy like Derek Queen, who's also from Washington, but I think Derek Queen's a little bit of a tricky fit to try to add to a situation with a lot of young players. Maybe he needs a little more defensive help around him. Maybe you have that with Sarr, but I just felt like Trey Johnson would be a more of a seamless fit, more easier projected, higher value player to have in the trade market early on. If I decide to retrade him, it looks like people would want Trey Johnson a lot, in my opinion. And so for me, I didn't let him drop past 6. He's too valuable in this draft to really let that happen. So that was my opinion. Just take Trey Johnson, 6'6" shooting guard out of Texas, who's going to be able to hit shots with the best of them. He is a fantastic scorer. Not really somebody who's going to put a lot of pressure on the rim, but he's an underrated passer from what I understand, and really just probably the best shot maker in this entire draft. So he's extremely fun player to watch. He's going to electrify with a lot of efficient shooting, and I think that was a big problem for the Washington Wizards last year, was how inefficient they were scoring the ball. You bring in Trey Johnson, he's going to hit a lot more shots more frequently. So I think this is a seamless fit on a team that could probably use a shooting guard. Very easy choice for me there. All right, number 7, the New Orleans Pelicans picked up in my mock draft 7'2" center out of Duke, Kamen Malowatch. Now, I know they took a center last year, and he played very well for them. But I just think that their center position could still use another piece in rotation. And it could be a little bit of the same. You're bringing in a guy at 7th overall pick who doesn't stretch the floor. The guy you had last year didn't stretch the floor. So you start finding yourself a little concerned that maybe there's a better way to utilize that pick. But for me, I just think that when you look at the rest of the roster and the Pelicans, they have other positions sold up. Now, I don't know if they're going to move on from their shooting guard position player that they have, CJ McCollum. So you maybe want to go in a shooting guard direction with this team. But my thing was, no, let me solidify my center position, since behind the center that they had wasn't a whole lot to be excited about, to be completely honest with you. They don't have other rim protection outside of the guy they drafted last year. So why don't I solidify my center position permanently, especially when you're in a league where you see guys starting to pile up. Teams are piling up on centers, guys that can get into the paint, guys that can do a lot of things. Why don't I just put Kamen Malowatch, a fast-footed 7'2" guy with massive arms, somebody who's going to create all types of trouble all over the place as it pertains to defensively, who's going to rebound the ball well, who's going to finish extremely well. He's just going to overall make me a very difficult team to deal with for 48 minutes at that center position. It's always going to be rim protection on the floor. I don't trust Zion to stay healthy necessarily. Yves Messi can't be the only center out there. Kelly Olynyk's the other guy. I mean, there's such a significant drop-off with your rim protection if something goes down with Yves Messi. You know, I look at guys like Jordan Hawkins, they got shooters. Brandon Boston is a guy who's going to be stepping into a bigger role, broke out last year. Carlo Matovic, a power forward, they really like a lot. Herb Jones may be moved, who knows for what, but if they keep him, you got him having you solidified defensively in areas. And Trey Murphy, of course, one of my favorite shooters in the league. He's playing some small forward, multi-positional stuff going on. You got DeJounte Murray on a multi-year contract, so I didn't really need a point guard necessarily if I'm not going to be moving him. And so for me, it was just like, well, I have such promising young shooting guards. Why don't I just solidify my big position, especially if Zion's going to be missing a lot of time. Maybe Yves and the guy that we're picking up here is not going to be on the floor at the same time, but for 48 minutes, no matter what, is going to be an elite rim protecting defensive center on the floor with him or Malowatch. So I just felt like, hey, man, this is kind of easy for me. Even though I know it's a little tricky getting centers back-to-back, when you talk about trying to solidify the fact that your team is going to be able to defend, solidify the fact that you already have guards that you don't want to create a log jam for, you want to give these guys bigger roles, just take Kamen Malowatch. Plus, you just picked up another draft pick at the end of the first round that you can use on a guard, which should be available. So that was my thinking. Kamen Malowatch is 7 for the New Orleans Pelicans. I know there are other players on the board that maybe you want to take, and there are going to be some teams who would rather have Malowatch right behind him, but I don't care, man. We took him in New Orleans. All right. Next up, 8th overall pick on my mock draft, I went with the Brooklyn Nets taking Jeremiah Fears, Oklahoma Sooners freshman, shooting guard, point guard combination, 6'4". Jeremiah Fears is the best ball handler in this draft, in my opinion. And a lot of what is wrong with him is strength-based. He needs to put on strength. He needs to grow into his body. Once that happens, he's going to be a much better finisher around the rim. He's already a significant playmaker who doesn't have trouble taking care of the basketball despite having high usage and constantly passing the ball around. That is a very key thing for me. And when you talk about the Brooklyn Nets, their guard situation is a little tricky because they do have D'Angelo Russell in place, but maybe they re-sign him, maybe they don't. And a lot of the guys that they have are just kind of like role player guys that don't really have a big name. They're basically a clean slate. They have 4 picks in this first round here, so a lot of things can happen. They could trade a lot of these picks, maybe move up, maybe move out of the draft and get something, whatever. They can do much of anything that they want. So in my mind, I say, they can afford to bring a guy in who's going to be a connective piece, someone who's going to wow the crowd in a big market like New York or Brooklyn, somebody who's going to take his time to develop, but when he does, likely has all-star upside. Somebody who doesn't play defense that well, to be honest with you, but does have the ability to lock in when he's motivated to. And ultimately just going to be a spectacular, fun, Kyrie Irving-like player to watch dribbling the ball. And given the fact they had Kyrie in place, lost him, I think that Brooklyn would be enamored with this guy's ability to dribble and make plays for others and just make a promising team of young players who are trying to make a name for themselves better with his passing ability. And some of these guys that I saw Brooklyn have last year, you don't really know who they are, but they're starting to really take a turn for the better. I think Jeremiah Fears is a guy that's going to immediately make all of them better. And so I'm bringing in Jeremiah Fears. I do want to see him put on strength. I don't expect for him to be no superstar youngster or nothing like that, but over the course of the next 3 or 4 years, as they grow together, he grows with them. He could be the face of what it is that they do for the most part, ushering in a new era of Brooklyn Nets basketball, and I think he's just the type of player that New York is going to take well too. So Jeremiah Fears, I think, is a no-brainer. I would actually be surprised if they pass on him at 8. I don't think it's going to happen. He should be there. All right, number 9. I went with one of my favorite players in this draft for the Toronto Raptors, 6'6" point guard, shooting guard combination, Kasparas Yakushonis. Kasparas is fun to watch too. Like Jeremiah Fears, this dude has a very nice handle, typical Euro guard type of dude that can make a lot of plays for himself and others. I don't think he's great defensively. I didn't remember hearing too much about him defensively, so that could be a determining factor of whether or not this is the greatest pick for the Toronto Raptors. But when I look at what the Toronto Raptors have, is their name involved in a lot of trade rumors, guys on contracts they probably want to move on from. I know they would have loved to have gotten a guy like Kamen Malawach or a guy like Noah Singay here, but I just felt like I was going to take them a little sooner in my mock, and so he wasn't available. Those guys weren't available. Kasparas was to fill in the point guard spot, likely going to be created by the vacancy left by Quickly. If the rumors are true that they may be moving quickly, they probably should. And Kasparas can be a guy that makes other people better. He does turn the ball over more than he should for his point guard positioning, but he's a 6'6" guy that I think could fit very well next to Grady Dick, very well next to whoever they retain. And they do have some things going on with their guard spot. Bruce Brown could potentially be leaving. It's a lot of stuff going on with the Toronto Raptors that I just felt like Kasparas Yakushonis could be in place to help solidify what they have with Grady. Somebody who's not going to be buried behind Scotty Barnes unless they trade Scotty, which could be possible. I know they could use a center here, but I just didn't love the centers for this mock draft that would ultimately be available. This is where I think Kamen Malawach actually goes if he is passed on by those other teams before him. But given the fact that he is gone, Kasparas, to me, looked like somebody who could make the Toronto Raptors a fun team to watch next to Grady and Scotty and whatever the heck they decide to keep, because everything else is pretty much on the trade block. So that's really what I see there, man. A team that probably is settling for something that's not quite what they would go for, but Kasparas is going to fit very well in Toronto, and I think he's going to be very fun to watch. All right, number 10. This one is one of the more easy ones for me. I have them taking Carter Bryant and them being the Houston Rockets at the 10th overall pick. Small forward, power forward combination, 6'8". Carter Bryant can do a lot of things. He doesn't necessarily create for himself as a 6'8 wing, small forward position, but this dude definitely can play some defense. He can catch and shoot pretty well, and moves great laterally, runs the floor extremely well. And I just think he's going to fit in so very well, given the fact that he can stretch the floor with some of their other defenders. You talk about slapping him next to guys like Reed Shepherd, Green, Jalen Green, obviously Amon Thompson. They have a team that really doesn't really need this pick, and I can see them trading this pick. But if they don't trade this pick, you want to bring in somebody that's likely going to be easy to fill in, and not somebody who's going to take up any type of drop-off, not going to create any drop-off in regards to their talent level or athleticism or overall defensive prowess, shooting prowess, or none of that. This is somebody who should slip into what they have rather easily. So that's really what I was thinking. Just a fantastic young player to add to a bunch of fantastic young players. Somebody who's going to be a recipient of a lot of fantastic passes from Alperen Sengun. If they don't move Fred VanVleet, you're not bringing in a guard that's going to be kind of stuck in a log jam. I'm really sensitive to that sort of thing. Someone who's going to play well with Cam Whitmore, someone who's going to not have any drop-off from Dillon Brooks, maybe gives them some Dillon Brooks insurance. I know they just read up on Steven Adams, so you don't necessarily need to go a center there. They got Jabari Smith still in place. He's not taking anything from him. Terry Eason may be moving on as a small forward, so he could potentially replace Terry Eason. Or you can put these guys in any type of combination and fit. When you add a guy like Carter Bryant to Terry Eason, Reed Shepherd, Jabari Smith, Cam Whitmore, Dillon Brooks, Fred VanVleet, Amon Thompson, he's just more of the same. Jalen Green, he's just more of the same. More of what you cannot guard on that wing position. More of what can get out in the open court and finish on the break. More of what can basically defend you and lock you all the way down. When you talk about Reed Shepherd, Terry Eason, and Amon Thompson alone, and you add Carter Bryant to that, I mean, you just absolutely have no drop-off from elite wing play. And so for me, this was a no-brainer. I do think they're probably going to have to move on from one of these or two of these guys to fit all of what it is that they have, but that they do, they replace him with somebody who's going to fit perfectly. So for me, that's one of my favorite fits in this lottery selection area. Carter Bryant to the Rockets. Pretty damn easy. All right, so I think the Rockets could also have interest in Noah Singa as well. We'll see what they do. All right, the 11th overall pick is the Portland Trail Blazers. I went with Con Knueppel. Now, I actually like Con Knueppel more than I like some of the players that we've already taken here. I'll just put that out there as a disclaimer. This wasn't my favorite selection of players in order, but more so for team need. And for the Portland Trail Blazers, there's one single thing that stood out for me. The Portland Trail Blazers have picked up a lot of different guys over the years in the draft. None of them can shoot. If I'm being completely honest with you, they can't shoot. I was looking at somebody as I was doing homework on the Portland Trail Blazers. Someone had commented on a random video that it would be great if the Portland Trail Blazers would just finally draft someone who could actually shoot. They always pick up guys that can do a lot of other intangible things, but never anybody who can shoot the dang basketball. And so Con Knueppel just happened to be available at 11 in this mock. Now, I don't think Con's going to be available. I think Con is likely to be taken much sooner. I like him more than this. But looking at how teams was, how the draft was shaking up in this particular draft made it so that Con had to slip, unfortunately. But I actually like Con in the top 10, to be completely honest with you. So this would be a great value for the Portland Trail Blazers. It gives them a shooting guard that they can utilize, small forward as well, who's going to just bring some overall stability to their shooting. He's going to be a connective piece that makes people better. Pretty solid ball handler, but really good, talented passer. And just the overall, probably the best shooter available at this point in the draft. He could have went sooner to the Rockets. He could have went to Toronto. There are a lot of different teams that I could have put him on. I could have put him on Utah at 5. I could have seen him go in any one of these situations. But ultimately, I had him fall in my mock here to the Portland Trail Blazers. And they should be absolutely ecstatic to pick up a shooter who's going to make guys better, who's going to throw some nice lobs around for some of these explosive guys like Shaedon Sharpe and Jeremy Grant to catch. And just somebody who can solidify the future, help solidify the future of the team with what it is that the Portland Trail Blazers already have in place with Scoot Henderson and several other players that are young that they've been drafting over the last couple of years. So Portland's been drafting pretty well, if you ask me. They made a good trade last year to improve their basketball team. As I look for their players, Tamani Kamara is in place. Fantastic small forward that can defend some. Klingon, also somebody who's going to continue on the path of making them a elite defensive level team, but they didn't have elite shooting. Shaden Sharp can score, but not a great shooter. Murray hasn't really panned out. Walker's a nice power forward here and there. But ultimately, I just need the Portland Trailblazers to find someone in this core that can shoot very well. And so that was my thinking. Just give them a shooter, somebody at that shooting guard, small forward position, likely who can just stabilize and bring a certain maturity level to their team. And, Danny Avdija was the player that I said that they picked up in trade. Obviously, you got their center position sold up with Klingon and Ayton. They probably move one of them, probably Ayton. But, they'd likely move on from their shooting guard position player, Anthony Simons. And I think Concanipo could potentially come in and replace him as the best shooter on their team. And if they don't move on from Simons, then you got another person next to him who could legitimately shoot. So it's a good fit, man. Portland would be ecstatic, in my opinion, to have Concanipo fall to them. The fit's good. He fills a position of need. He doesn't create a log jam in any way. And it's just a clean fit, a very clean fit, in my opinion. All right. Next up, Igor Dimin goes to the Chicago Bulls. Shooting guard, 6'9", elite passer. One of the best passer in this draft, easily. Now, I know that you look at the Bulls and say they already have that. They got Lonzo Ball. They have, what's the fella's name? My mind is gone blank, but they got a couple players that do that on this team. Try to put the Bulls in here. But they got Kobe White. You got, a lot of different players that do that. And I just think that you can never have too many players that are unselfish who can finish and make plays for other people. Make players who need the ball get the ball in their spots, in their pockets. I just feel like you can never have too many of those guys. And the Bulls have an affinity for those type of players. Josh Giddey was who I was trying to think of. They picked up Matas Buzelis last year, who's going to be an excellent recipient of passes. You got Nikola Vucevic, who's a player that needs the ball. Kobe Wright's a shooter, scorer, who's going to receive passes from these people. So if you got Lonzo, Giddey, and Dimin on the floor at the same time, it's never going to be a shortage of ball movement, finishing ability, length on the floor, guys who are going to get Kevin Huerter the ball, guys who are going to, assist in making Jalen Smith better. I just think that, for me, the Bulls have shown me that they love this type of player, that they don't mind putting multiple ones of them on the floor. And if you got one available to draft, it gives you insurance on Lonzo in case he goes down. It gives you insurance on Giddey in case you don't want to repay him. It just seems like the right type of thing for the Bulls, even though they do have other fits, for them to draft somebody that they really, really like, that template of player, who basically is another Josh Giddey for them. And so I like Matas Buzelis a lot. I would also like to see him go to a team that doesn't have a bunch of what he is. But when you put these type of players on the floor with one another, you start finding out that you can make plays that most teams can't make. You start having ball movement and that is just elite in nature. And I just love the idea of Igor Dimin being added to a situation where he has two other guys just like him who are genius passers. It's going to be fun. And I think the Bulls should take a chance and make that happen, especially since some of these other pieces that they could draft in this range based on how this is shaking up aren't great fits. Igor is a good fit, and I think he's going to be great. Look next to Montes and Kobe for a long time, and give some insurance on players they need to probably consider moving on from. So that's what I'm doing with number 12, Igor Dimin, 6'9", out of BYU, headed to the Bulls. All right, number 13 is the Atlanta Hawks, and they are taking Derek Queen out of Maryland. Maryland Terrapin, 6'10", center. Well, he's actually a guard. We know that boy's a guard. He's a center, but he plays like a guard. Huge guy. Got to be about 260 pounds, something like that. Huge brother who could take the ball at the top of the key and maneuver it around and play like a guard, drive at the rim, lay the ball up, dunk the ball. Whatever you need, he can do it. He can pass. He's a really talented passer. And I just look at Derek Queen as somebody who will likely slot in as a 4 with the Atlanta Hawks, for which they could use, and somebody who's not necessarily a center as it pertains to rim protection and stuff like that. They got Onyeka Okongwu. They're likely going to be moving on from a few guys. And I look at their team and I just say they have some players in the wing, sort of like some other teams that we've seen. So to where you probably don't want to bring them a guard necessarily because you got some people like Kobe Buffkin who are waiting for opportunities. It's really a situation where I just felt like the power forward position was a position that they could use another player in. And with the unique style of this particular guy, I do think that he's going to fit in well off the bench in units that fit what he does as a big player. But ultimately, I think he could be just a fill-in power forward for now until they figure out what they want to do there. You know, I look at Jalen Johnson, who's a fantastic power forward, but has had some issues with his injuries. Zachary Richachet, who they've picked up at the small forward position last year, who's going to fit in well going forward. Dyson Daniels, who they found as a gem from the New Orleans Pelicans last year in a trade that they made moving off of DeJounte Murray. You know, Onyeka Okongwu, who's the player who's going to fit right next to him, who's going to be a recipient of a lot of what it is his passes are. They're going to be crashing the glass. Gives you a lot of size in that front court, and some Clint Capella insurance. So I just like what that looks like to me, and it doesn't create a logjam. That's something I'm really sensitive to. He doesn't really shoot the three ball very well, but he is going to make players around him better. He is going to help with 50-50 balls and stuff like that with his quick hands. And ultimately is going to be a heavy load to try to guard and creates a different dynamic, something that the Atlanta Hawks do not have. So I really like Derek Queen falling to 12 and going to the Hawks. And I think that any fit with Derek Queen can be potentially tricky, but this seems like a reasonable 13 there. All right, so moving on. Colin Murray Boyles will be going to the San Antonio Spurs, a South Carolina Gamecock, 6'7", power forward, one of the best defenders in this entire draft. Someone who can stretch the floor a little bit but does need to work on his shot. Very good finisher of the basketball. He can finish with the best of them, two-way personified in that regard. If his three-point shot comes around, his upside is all-star to me. But you're picking him up because he solidifies an intensity that the Spurs have often had in the history of their franchise. You talk about elite winning level players that can defend, who are going to play well in big situations. I think Colin Murray Boyles fits that to a T. You slap him next to Wemby, you don't have to worry about him being a deficiency on the defensive end because he's elite. Wemby's elite. So what you have is one of the best defensive front courts in basketball just by picking Colin Murray Boyles up and developing him as he's expected to go. It's a young team, so you don't have to necessarily ask Colin to play fast or well, rather, too soon. And I think Colin is a player who's proven already in college that he's a defender in this level. So I really like what Colin Murray Boyles brings to the Spurs. They have plenty of guards. Obviously, we took Harper with the second overall pick, so this is their second selection. And you just love solidifying another power forward type guy, 6'7" guy with long arms, strength to finish the ball, and just somebody who's going to make life easy for Wemby, who's going to solidify having to guard some of the players that maybe Wemby you don't want to put on for foul trouble reasons, stuff like that. So this is a rather easy selection. I think a lot of people have Colin Murray Boyles falling to 14, but not further than that. Spurs should probably take him at 14. All right, the next player we have to talk about is Thomas Sorber, 15th overall pick, going to the Oklahoma City Thunder. Georgetown Hoya, Christmas Day born baby, 6'10", 7-foot wingspan, 7'2" wingspan. He might be a little bigger arms than that, actually, longer arms. Thomas Sorber. I like Thomas Sorber a lot with the Oklahoma City Thunder because I look at the Thunder and they have everything. But the one thing they could solidify a little further is their center position, the backup center position. I know they tend to go for the long, wingy, Noah Singay type of guys, but he's gone on this thing. I know they could go with more solidified defensive wing players, but they have so much of that player would likely not get too many opportunities to play. I think Thomas Sorber, given the fact that they're such a loaded basketball team, he's one of the only players that I see in this range that wouldn't get drowned out by the overall limited opportunities that ultimately OKC would have to offer him. Now, I can see OKC trading this pick for that reason. I think it's a decent chance they do move number 15. But if they don't move number 15 and Thomas Sorber is available, I look at their center position and I say, okay, behind Hartenstein, who they may have to move on from because of financial reasons over the next several years. Who's playing center? Are they going to have to ask what's the fellow's name? The other center to play so much and not really have a legitimate backup center if for some reason you lose Hartenstein. So that's my thing. I just think that the Oklahoma City Thunder have a prime opportunity to solidify their center position. Chet Holmgren is who I'm trying to think of. They have a great time selecting a guy like Thomas Sorber and knowing that they have an opportunity to play him, knowing that they're not creating a log jam at any other position. And although I like Jay Will, I look at him as a 4, to be honest with you. Not to be confused with J-Dub, star, but Jay Will. I don't like him as my going forward backup center behind Chet Holmgren if for some reason we're moving on from Hartenstein. And so for me, Thomas Sorber is a no-brainer. I think if they don't take Sorber, they should probably go for someone else at the center position. Just solidify that with this lottery pick and just make your team overall deep in every position. So that's what my thinking is with the OKC Thunder. I mean, obviously this is a championship level team. They're going to be playing the Game 7 on Sunday, so we'll see if they win it or not. But the point is, they don't really need a whole lot. But what they could use for certain is a backup center going forward. And I think Thomas Sorber will project to be a very high-level backup center and somebody who's going to create significant amount of rim protection, probably more than what Hartenstein provides right now. So the rich get richer, man. And the OKC Thunder will be taking the Christmas Day baby, Thomas Sorber, at 15. All right, so 16. We've seen the Memphis Grizzlies actually get this selection. They made a trade, of course, with the Orlando Magic that sent their star shooting guard, Desmond Bane, that away, brought themselves back Cole Anthony, and who else came in that trade? KCP, ex-Laker champion, Denver Nugget champion. And because of it, naturally, I think they should probably try to pick up another shooting guard, somebody who can kind of play that position, not maybe the same way, but do some of the same things. And so I gave them Cedric Coward, for which I think makes a lot of sense if they decide to go that route. Cedric Coward, 6'6", Washington State Cougar, somebody whose draft his stock is probably higher than this at this point. Someone who shot the ball extremely well, albeit in short sample size, only played 6 games in college last year with Washington State. But he's a 6'6" guy with like 7'1" wingspan, and he's a real two-way guy. Someone who can track people around the defensive end and to be a fantastic catch-and-shoot player on the offensive end. Somebody who finishes very well in the lane with the length. It translates on both sides. Just a true two-way wing. And those have so much value. You can plug him into any situation. So plugging him into a Memphis situation that looks like it could potentially teeter toward a rebuild, Cedric Coward is the fantastic piece that you can kind of build around some of the other guys that they have in place. Obviously, John Morant, you don't know if they're going to keep Triple J, but, they drafted a center last year, obviously. And, Scottie Pippen Jr. in place, probably going to lose Santi Aldama. So you just want somebody who could stretch the floor comfortably, somebody who could play both sides, fit in any situation. Cedric Coward epitomizes that probably as best as anybody in this draft, in my opinion. All right, so that's what they're doing at 16, Cedric Coward to the Grizz. Next up, Danny Wolf. Going to Timberwolves. I know, kind of corny. But when I thought about the Timberwolves and I looked at how this draft was shaping up here, some of the stuff that I would have loved to send to the Wolves just didn't fall to them. And so for me, it's like I wanted to kind of give them a point guard, and I thought about their point guard position. I'm like, okay, well, they did get Dillingham last year from the Spurs in a trade on draft day. They probably want him to be that guy. I think they probably should move on from their point guard that they have in place. What's my man's name? He's been around, played with the Memphis Grizzlies, ironically enough, for years. They need a point guard, but I just didn't see one that I was comfortable taking that high a range. And then I looked at their power forward situation. I'm like, all right, they're likely going to pay Julius Randle, but they could potentially lose Naz Reid. Maybe they're moving on from Gobert. I hear that his name's getting involved in trades. This thing is built around, obviously, Ant-Man. But the problem with Ant-Man is he's not known for being a great ball mover, although he has improved in that way. He's not really somebody you see getting other people involved. So you kind of want whoever you're bringing in to kind of have that as a strength to kind of solidify being able to just kind of make others better. And so I think Danny Wolf makes sense in a lot of areas because he gives them some strengths at the power forward center position. He's also a guy like Derek Queen who you can give the ball to at the top of the key, and he could play like a guard. That's how he was utilized at Michigan. And really just someone overall that if you want to replace Rudy Gobert, you got a 7-footer. If you're replacing Nas, you got another 7-footer. Somebody who's going to fit very well next to Jaden McDaniels. I would have loved to seen a replacement for Nickeil Alexander-Walker with that pick as well, but like again, you'd already missed out on some of my favorite guys in that range for that role. And then I look at the Minnesota Timberwolves and I say they're sneakily not shallow at the small forward position. You talk about guys like Leonard Miller, Josh Minott, Jalen Clark, Terrence Shannon Jr. Those guys just need a little more opportunities to play. They don't have that right now because they're playing behind people like Jaden McDaniels and Dante DiVincenzo. So I didn't want to bring another one of those guys that's either going to compete with them, ultimately take away their opportunities. So I thought that maybe I should just solidify my power forward center position. A guy like Wolf kind of plays like a guard, so it gives me a little bit of everything at once. So that's what I'm thinking. And plus the Wolf thing, I just think it's a great marketing, corny kind of thing that should probably be taken advantage of if he's available. And I'm bringing Wolf to the Wolves, man. I just think that it's a layup in a lot of different ways. And so that is what I was thinking. I don't doubt that they probably are thinking the same way, to be honest with you. All right, with the 18th overall pick, the Washington Wizards, this got a little tricky for me because I got well outside of the range of how I have my big board, and I gave them a center because I looked at their guard situation, and we had already selected Johnson at their shooting guard position. And like I said earlier today, they already got a bunch of guards and stuff like that. They did take, as we said, Sarr last year, but I felt like behind him, they didn't really have a whole lot of center depth. So I looked at it sort of like the New Orleans situation. So for me, I gave them Joanne Berenger out of France, 6'10", 7-foot plus wingspan. Another one of those dudes that have a long range of motion with his arm length and how he can stretch out. Good finisher, fantastic rim protector. Just the best overall center prospect in the range, even though he may not actually be in that range. But his draft stock is shaping up to elevate. And I think that the Washington Wizards have solidified some of the other stuff that they need with young players at other positions. For me, I just thought that filling in their center position at this point made the most sense based on what it is I was looking at and assessing. So I took Joanne Berenger, 6'10" guy who's going to provide a lot of rim protection and finishing around the rim. All right, number 19, the Brooklyn Nets. Their second of 4 first-round picks. I went with Jace Richardson for the Brooklyn Nets. Now, we had already given them another scorer guard at Jeremiah Fears. And the thing about this is I wasn't overly comfortable putting Jace in this situation because he's a little short arm, short person, 6'3", which is not short in real life, but he's in basketball. Michigan State Spartan, excellent finisher, though. He can finish around the rim. He can shoot the three as well as anybody. He can create for himself. Not really a playmaker for others, but when you consider pairing him together with D'Angelo Russell and Jeremiah Fears, potentially they're going to be able to get him the ball, and he's not going to be responsible for making plays for others too much, for which we do not want him to do. So you are a little small, a little unathletic at that position. Not ideal, but my thinking was let's just load the Nets up with scorers, guys that can really light the ball up and just give them some excitement. That was my thinking. If you're starting over, it's a clean slate. What they don't have a lot of on that roster right now is high-level, high-upside, exciting scorers that are going to potentially make a name for themselves, going to electrify the Brooklyn crowd and ultimately bring revenue to the Nets. So that was kind of what I was thinking. Chase Richardson, 6'3", Michigan State Spartan, son of Jason Richardson from the Golden State Warriors back in the day. Doesn't have his dad's athleticism, but he does have some pop to his game, and he really is just a fantastic overall scorer from the mid-range, from the three. He's really a talented guy who can shoot pretty much all over the place, man. and just a fantastic efficiency score around the rim as a small person. Think of a guy like Tony Parker back in the day, how well he finished around the rim. This is somebody who has that type of talent, laying the ball up specifically, and I really think he was going to be fun to watch wherever he goes. So I paired him up next to Jeremiah Fears, and they got their backcourt of the future. Although they're a little small, they're going to need some other stuff, but it'll be fun for the meantime. That's what it's about for me with Brooklyn. All right, number 20, Miami Heat. Georgia Bulldogs freshman 6'11" Asa Newell goes to the Miami Heat at 20. There's a lot of things I could have did with the Heat here. I've mocked this pick differently every single time I've done a mock. This is just what I happen to fall on based on how this was set up. For me, you can't give the Miami Heat just any old body, man. They have to fit Heat culture. It's an attitude, it's an energy that has to be in place with the players that they pick up, and Asa Newell fits that. Fantastic finisher around the rim. I know that's something we've been saying a lot. 6'11" in height, nice offensive rebounder, defensive rebounding ability. Defensively, he's okay, but he is a guy with a high motor who's going to pick you apart with hook shots in the paint from 10 feet, just to give him the ball, and he's going to score a lot. He is somebody that I expect in his rookie season may have a 35-point game because he's going to be spammed so damn much when you give him the ball. He is a guy who I think is going to immediately, depending on the fit he goes to, have an opportunity to raise his value from where he's at on draft day. This is somebody I think can really play. This is somebody who's going to fit on the NBA floor really well. He's going to bring you a lot of energy. Remind some people of Joakim Noah. Not quite seeing Noah there. I see some other type of power forward that has a lot of energy. No, Joakim Noah is more of a defensive player and a passer, somebody who's going to pass the ball very well. Actually, you know what? I think Asa is a better defensive player I'm giving him credit for, but he doesn't have the passing ability. I think that's what separates him from Noah. But energy-wise, defensively, he does play well from what I remember. And offensively, he is just an energetic guy. When you give him the ball, he's going to spam dunks all night long. He's just going to keep going. And that's the type of player you want to bring to the Miami Heat. Pair him next to what they have in place, Tyler Hero. Think of a guy like Bam Adebayo, obviously. They struck gold last year by picking up Khalil Ware, and this is somebody who's going to fit next to Ware to go forward in the future, part of that rotation that they have at that small power forward center situation. So I just really like this pick for the Heat. I think they should take Asa Newell if he's available, but they do have other options as well, including the guy that I took with the 21st pick for the Utah Jazz. This may be a little high for him in a lot of people's eyes, but not in mine. Adu Thero, small forward, although probably power forward, 6'8", Arkansas Razorback Jr., who's coming off a little bit of an injury, which is probably what could drop him to the second round. He doesn't shoot the ball, but he's by far, in my opinion, the most explosive athlete in this draft. Well, VJ Escom, but it's really Adu Thero. That dude can really, really fly, man. His explosiveness and his strength is what separates him from everybody else. He is going to be another one of those Zion Williamson strong, LeBron James strength. I'm talking about pure strength, not talent. Who else comes to mind when I think about these type of strength merchants? Julius Randle. He's another one of those, man. A body that you're going to have to put someone very strong on, or he's going to push through him. It's that simple. This is a guy who doesn't shoot the three very well, but is a very, very talented defensive player, super explosive athlete, and just an overall bully down there that you're going to have to deal with. Now, my thing what I'll do with Thero is I made a video about him about a month ago. My thinking was you draft this guy and you just put him in a gym somewhere with a bunch of trainers for like 3 years. I know he's a junior, he's a little older, and that's a thing. But you teach him how to ball because he can play any sport. He's faster than most, he's stronger than everybody, and he's more explosive than everybody. This guy could have been great at any sport he played. He just so happened to play basketball, and he's a monster. And so my thing what I do with Thero is I think he has one of the highest upsides in this draft, so long as you're patient with him and give him an opportunity to develop his basketball skills. Because the basketball skills are not quite there on the offensive end. Defensively, he's a monster. He's a gifted defensive player. But on the offensive end, he can learn to shoot a little better. He can dribble a little better, this kind of thing. He's going to learn how to get offensive rebounds a little better, that type of stuff. But if he develops any type of three-point shot, I heard a lot of people talk about OG Anunoby. I don't really see that. because he's so explosive. Like, if you think of OG Anunoby with Zion explosiveness, who can't shoot the three, that's who Adu Thero is. OG's an excellent three-point shooter. That's why it separates him. But, like, yeah, I see what they see as far as body type. But he's just significantly stronger and more explosive than OG. Significantly. And so I don't know if that's the greatest example. But Adu is somebody that I wouldn't hesitate to put in any situation that I have a couple of years to and a great deal of development to focus on, because he's one of the great projects going forward, in my opinion. If they turn him into what it is that I think he could turn into, this is going to be a guy who can make all-star teams. So look out for Adu Thero. I'm insanely high on this guy. All right, next up, Rasheer Fleming will be going to the Atlanta Hawks. 6'9" power forward out of St. Joe's. He's similar to Adu Thero in some ways, and I think a lot of people have Rasheer ahead of Adu Thero. I just don't, not in my mind. But they're similar in the sense that Rasheer is very strong. He's also extremely gifted on the defensive end. Also a very big guy, 6'9" in height, as we've already mentioned, power forward. His gifts on the defensive end, he could really defend. He can track people around with the best of them. Kind of reminds me of a poor man's, on the defensive end specifically, a poor man's, what's my guy, Scotty Barnes. When I think about defensively, Scotty Barnes, his size and what he was able to do laterally when I did homework on him several years ago when he was a rookie. Some of that stuff with Rasheer Fleming. I think the issue with Rasheer Fleming is, as I've mentioned on this camera once before, he's a nightmare driving the basketball at the rim. He cannot dribble toward the rim. He's going to really need a lot of help developing his offensive game. But defensively, he could be your defensive anchor and a game changer on the defensive end. And so I don't know that Atlanta really needed that necessarily. We gave them Derek Queen earlier, so that's kind of I would ask that he be a complement to Derek Queen's non-defensive ability in a way. But when you talk about the quick hands of Derek Queen, you talk about the energy of Onyeka Okongwu, you add a Rasheer Fleming to that situation, you're starting to develop a front court that is rather difficult to deal with. And so that was my thinking. It's going to take some time to develop Rasheer Fleming, but immediately he comes in as an elite level defender who can likely even guard players a bit smaller than him with his speed and his overall tracking ability. I'm excited about Rasheer Fleming so long as I'm not asking him to dribble toward the rim. So there's some things about Rasheer that makes him a little polarizing. I'm not overly high on him, but I think at 22 he's good value for the Hawks. All right, number 23. I'm taking for the New Orleans Pelicans with the second pick that they just picked up. They made a trade with the Indiana Pacers very recently, right before Game 6 actually, and got this pick and sent the Pacers next year's first-round pick. They're going to be taking a point guard here, 6'6", Ben Saraf out of Israel. And I know that's a little polarizing right now with stuff going on in the world with Israel. But at the end of the day, man, we don't discriminate. No one when it comes to this sport. If you can do what you need to do, we will draft you. That's my attitude. I'm not bringing that into the situation. Ben Saraf is a guy that can really make other people better. Now, he does have some limitations defensively. He does have some limitations with turnovers and stuff like that. But Ben Saraf is a very, very reliable playmaker for others. He can pass the rock very well. Been playing basketball overseas for years. In fact, I think he's a teammate of what's the guy we took? Noah Asinghe. And he really made Noah look great out there, getting the rock and lobs and stuff like that. Has a mid-range game, if I'm not mistaken. Can stretch it a little bit, but not necessarily a three-point whiz is Ben Saraf. But he's a 6'6" point guard, although they have him listed as a shooting guard. I'm putting him as a point guard here for the Pelicans. I just think that the Pelicans could use a backup point guard. You know, at this point, you start getting a little iffy about where you take certain guys. You draft for need. You take best player on the board. But Ben Saraf is somebody who's, you know, as early as last year, you were hearing about potentially being a lottery pick. And so for me, I just thought that, you know, when you talk about size, you want somebody who's going to back up some of these other guys and get the ball to the shooters that the Pelicans already have. Get the ball to guys like Zion. You know, get the ball to, who do we give them? Common Malawach and those guys at this point. So that's what my thinking was. Just get them a pure point guard, somebody who can back up DeJounte Murray, give them some insurance for DeJounte since he's had some injury issues, and ultimately just make other guys better, get the ball to shooters. And so that was my thinking. Get the ball to Ben Saraf and let him make plays for other people off the bench. All right, next up, OKC Thunder have another lottery pick. And I have them at 24 taking Will Riley, Illinois Fighting Illini 6'8", small forward shooting guard combination. Now, the reason why I was comfortable giving them Will Riley was because I don't think Will Riley's ready. And I don't think they have an opportunity for that player. So if you bring in a guy that's likely not ready, it ain't going to matter that you don't play him his rookie season. Send him down to the G League, let him get the best out of himself. Will Riley is a guy who has a lot of upside. And with the length and the 6'8" height, he's a wing that can shoot. Looks like he's going to be able to develop into a defender, although he's not quite a defensive player. You see the tools are there. The energy's there. The motor's there. But he's just a little small. And he's going to have to put on a lot of strength. And I think once he puts on strength, he's going to look like a legitimate wing in this league. But it's going to require him to really put on that strength. I like his mid-range game. I like his dribble pull-up game. There's some things about Will Riley that I like a lot. And so for me, if he were a bit more developed, maybe if he would have stayed in school for another 2 years, I think he could have solidified himself as somebody who could help you right away. But I did not want to draft him into a situation where he would be needed right away. And OKC is probably the best situation for which you will not be used right away. So for me, that was my thinking for giving them Will Riley. They don't really need a small forward. They don't need anything at this point. We gave him Thomas Sorber with the 19th overall pick, I believe it was, or rather 15th overall pick. And so my thinking was just give them the best player on the board, somebody who's not likely to be able to help them right away and won't necessarily be ready to. So that was my thinking, Will Riley at 24. All right, the Orlando Magic. So, of course, they gave away their pick and to the Memphis Grizzlies. So this is their only lottery pick at this point. And my thinking was when you're bringing in the guys that they brought in, you have your small forward and power forward position solidified with stars. Your point guard situation, you did move on from Cole Anthony, but you still got Anthony Black in place. Really can't really shoot that well. So they do have a three-point shooting issue, and they tried to address that by bringing in the guy that they traded for in Desmond Bane. That's one person. Who else is shooting the ball at a consistent rate? That was my thinking. Who can I trust to hit the three? Well, a lot of people say that Drake Powell can't shoot the three that well, but the eye test tells me that he's a very legitimate player to rely upon in that regard. He can hit the corner three rather consistently, although the numbers tell you something different. The form looks great. I trusted that could be something that I can hang my hat on in regards to drafting him. Now, that's not the reason you draft Drake Powell per se, but it was why I fit him on the Orlando Magic, because I thought that he would further complement what they are trying to put together, which is a team that should be able to shoot a bit better because they have defenders already in place. But what I did not want is for them to have any drop-off defensively in trying to create that process. And that's why Drake Powell fits even further, because Drake is an excellent defender. That's where he's going to make his money in this league. Perimeter defense, he can track about 3 different positions, 1, 2, and 3. And he's really just one of my very favorite players, if not my very favorite player in this entire draft. I like him a lot more than the 25th overall pick, but I respect value. As you guys know who follow me, we don't reach for nothing. If they say he's in the 25 range, he's in the 25 range. And if I can afford to let him drop there, that's where I get my best value. After I get him here and I tell you he's a top 20 pick, then, I've gotten great value. But as long as you see him as top 20, based on the market, I'm not going to betray that because these picks are too valuable to betray value. But in my opinion, Drake Powell is a great value pick at 25. I just happen to be higher on him than everybody else. Drake Powell is going to be a KCP replacement. That's what he is. Somebody who can track people around, somebody who could develop into being a reliable three-point shooter if he's not already, and somebody who I just think is going to be an upgrade from KCP defensively. Because KCP is a fantastic defensive player, but Father Time has hit him at this point. Wear and tear has hit him at this point. They moved on from him, sent him to Memphis. They need to replace that piece. I think that Desmond Bane can do some of that. And, of course, we do have to say that they have waiting in the wing Jet Howard, who's also an elite three-point shooter. But we just want to make them a better executing, shooting team, Orlando, because they had too many issues where they just couldn't score the ball consistently, and it did cap off their ceiling as a unit. I think there's more work to do for Orlando personally, but getting a guy like Drake Powell at this juncture of the draft would be a home run for me if I'm the Orlando Magic. 6'6" out of North Carolina, if I didn't mention that already. Also a freshman. So all these guys are freshmen. That's another thing. Many freshmen in this draft. All right, next up, the Brooklyn Nets have yet another pick, the number 26 overall pick. I gave them Maxime Renaud, another one of my favorite players in this draft. Now, he's a senior, 6'7" center out of Stanford. And this guy has such fantastic skills with the basketball in his hands around the rim, with his back to the basket, turnaround fade, hook shots, just an extremely polished guy. Not somebody you're going to get for rim protection, so I'm not trying to ask him to be that type of center. I have him in a different category of center, somebody who's going to look to score. Just give him the ball a bunch of times, he can spam up a bunch of scoring. Rebound the ball pretty well, good overall motor, but you're really picking him up just because he's so polished. When it's time to talk about skills and footworks, turnaround spins, pump fakes, stuff like that, he is a pretty player to watch. And so that's what I'm picking up Maxime Renaud for. When it comes to the Brooklyn Nets, we've given them Jace Richardson. We've given them Jeremiah Fears. We also handed them someone else too. Whenever I see that pick, I'll let you know. But the point is, now that we've gone through the majority of what the Nets have, for me, it was just making sure that we solidify. Actually, no, they got the next pick. That's what it is. They got Maxime Renaud and something else after this. This is what I wanted to do, is solidify the center position, but not give them somebody who's a bulldozer of a center, but more so of a polish, something a little different than what they already have, to give them more looks and more versatility in their lineup. So that was my thinking with the Nets. Maxime Renaud would be an excellent far cry from the other types of bigs that they already have in place. All right, and the next pick, of course, as we said, the Nets. They're getting great value here. I think this player is much better than the 27th overall pick. Colorado State Ram senior Nick Clifford. His value drops only because of his age. He is actually a fantastic small forward who's going to be able to help people right away, in my opinion. He has a nice motor, man. Nice motor, good pull-up game, three-point shooting game, excellent floor runner, just a really good wing. Probably one of the more talented wings in this draft, to be completely honest with you. It's just that he's a senior, so you don't expect that the upside is much higher than some of these other guys who are younger than him. But he's going to help you sooner. And in a perfect world, he probably goes to a situation that's not as rebuild heavy as the Nets. But for me, I just thought he was a little too good to pass up on. If you're the Nets at this point, this far into the draft, a guy like that falls to you, you just got to take him. And so that was my thinking with Nick Clifford. I like the long arms there with Nick. I like the ability to help you on the defensive end, the motor there, the experience there. Having played with Colorado, my understanding is that, you know, in his division, it wasn't the highest level of talent, so it could be some learning curve to try to catch up to what is expected of him based on the talent level shooting up significantly from where he was used to at Colorado State. But ultimately, Nick Clifford has proven that he's going to be able to fit in with most NBA teams, and likely has a long career in this league just off the strength of his height, skill set on both sides of the floor, length, and overall explosiveness for which he has been able to display in Colorado State. So I really like all the highlights I saw from Nick Clifford. He's actually one of my favorite players in this draft. A little older, but I mean, what are we really talking about? A guy's 24, 25 years old. He's still got a long career ahead of him, and he looks like he's polished and ready to go. I think he'll help any team he goes to, and Brooklyn just happens to be where he falls in this mock. All right, 28. The Brooklyn Nets, no, they're gone. We're moving on to the Boston Celtics. And I got them taking UConn Husky, hometown kind of area guy, Liam McNeely, 6'7", small forward out of the Huskies, freshman once again. Liam is a much better shooter than the 28th overall pick. This is excellent value for the Ops, and I call him that because I'm a Laker fan. This is excellent value for the Celtics because at the end of the day, what I was thinking was, first of all, this is the best player available, in my opinion, at this range. And second of all, he's a three-point shooter. And if you can't shoot the three, I'm not sending you to Boston, bro. That's all they want to do is shoot 50 and 63. So if I'm not taking the best three-point shooter available, I'm likely taking a center, and I think that they have a very early pick in the second round, so I could use that on a center. Let me take the guy that dropped to me that fits my situation better than anybody else, and that's Liam McNeely. He's one of the better shooters in this entire draft. Small forward who's really smart, somebody who can make plays for others a little bit here and there, somebody who finishes pretty well, not an overly athletic guy, but a nice quintessential Caucasian shooter that you can fit in with the Boston Celtics and their culture. This dude is going to fit with the Celtics shooting the ball about as well as anybody in the range. I think it's kind of a no-brainer that they use that pick on this player if he's available. There are other players in this range that you really like. In fact, you start getting excited about this draft around 26 when you start realizing some of those guys in the early second round are almost as good as some of them dudes at the early 20s. It's kind of, there's a lot of parity there. But for me, the best player left on this board was Liam McNeely, and since he fit the Celtics, it kind of made no sense not to take him. All right, the Phoenix Suns. Now, Phoenix was one of the more difficult picks for me because I think they have some needs that I passed up on because I do think this pick could potentially either be on the move or be a replacement for Kevin Durant, who likely is on the move. Maybe they move Kevin and this pick together. I don't know. So my thinking was, while I do think they could use another backup point guard, and there's some good ones available, and I do think they could use some center depth, and there's some good ones available, for me, let me just get somebody that I think can replace Kevin Durant, although, of course, you don't do that, but you know what I'm trying to say. Somebody who's going to be about 6'8", could shoot a little bit, not really a three-point shooter, but somebody who's going to have the body type that can be at the position that you're losing with KD. I gave them Noah Penda out of France. As I said, 6'8". I like Noah Penda. Can make plays for others, can get to the rim, high motor, can shoot a little bit, playmaker, put the ball in his hands. He can create for himself a little bit, create for others as well. Tends to turn the ball over a little much from what I understand, as he's a player who tends to try things. I don't know, he's going to need to work on being a little more efficient when passing the rock, being a little more connective since he has that in his arsenal. But I think as he develops, he's going to be a very helpful player. Has good long arms. Obviously 6'8", he fits in a lot of situations. So my thinking was, if they decide to move this pick, who's somebody everybody's going to like? Noah Penda. I felt like he would fit in a lot of situations. If I'm moving this pick, I'm not bringing some small shooter or some big center that can't stretch the floor, which is likely what I would have drafted with this pick. Get a wing. Wings are the most valuable thing in the league right now, the most easily interchangeable things in this league right that's available. So it fits two needs for me getting Noah Penda. The replacement of Kevin Durant, big body, long arm dude who could play the small forward, and it gives me somebody that I think most of the teams in this league would not have any trouble acquiring if I want to move the pick. So that's my thinking. Something real easy to pick and plug. Noah Penda, 29, Phoenix Suns. All right, and the final pick of this mock draft. Thank you guys for rocking with me this far, man. We got to the Clipper pick, and I went with someone else from France, Nolan Traore. I'm keeping the Traore brothers in L.A. We tried to do that with Max Christie and Cam Christie as well, but of course we moved Cam Christie in the Luka trade, so that didn't stay that way. But we will have Nolan Traore with the Clippers and Armel Traore with the Lakers in our G League situation. Of course, Armel and Nolan are very different players. Nolan was somebody who's probably supposed to be, his range could go anywhere from like 10 to 35. Like, he has one of the more vast draft ranges in this entire thing. But at the end of the day, Nolan is just a very fast-paced point guard. Not overly talented in any other areas that I've seen. He can make plays for others. Not a particularly great shooter, not a particularly great ball handler, not a particularly great finisher or anything like that. But he is a very, very fast speed demon. You put the ball in his hands and suddenly your pace doubles, basically. He's a speed merchant. And I just think that the Clippers, they've been running James Harden at the point guard, and I don't think they have somebody that can play make for them. That's my thinking. Outside of James Harden, they really don't have a connective piece that's going to look for others. That's something that Nolan can do. You put him in the pick and roll, he can either create off of that for himself, or he can create off of that, make it plays for others, find an open man, and just be an overall connective piece. And so that was my thinking. The Clippers can go in a lot of different directions with this pick, but I thought the best player on the board was probably Nolan Traore. Player of need is probably Nolan Traore. And so that was my thinking, man. 6'4", point guard out of France completes the first round. And of course, there are still players that did not get drafted that deserve to be given some credit, as I often like to give you guys. But I didn't get into the second round because there's a lot of reasons why I didn't. But if anything, at the end of the day, this is just a long process. But I do want to mention that there are some guys, and I will tell you what they are as soon as this thing loads up. But at the end of the day, I feel confident that with what was available, I addressed the needs of the teams that were available. That's really what it was about for me. Some of the guys that didn't get drafted: Hugo Gonzalez, athletic 6'6" guy out of Spain, small forward. I think he has some good motor. Not really great at anything, but I like the energy, the try-hard ability, and the overall physique. He takes care of himself. I think he's going to fit a lot of fast-paced situations. Walter Clayton, fantastic scorer, shooting guard, 6'3". I kind of stayed away from guys who were kind of shorter in this draft, or guys that don't particularly connect well. Maybe it's just my preference, but I don't really like short dudes that can't pass, if I'm making any sense here. Yeah, he can shoot like crazy, but I just don't know that his playmaking makes a whole lot of sense if I'm going to have him out there getting hunted on the defensive end. That's my thinking. I just like switchable players, or guys with a bit more height. But Walter Clayton is more than worthy of being a first-round pick. That's why I'm mentioning him. Ryan Kalkbrenner, elite defensive player, 7'1", wingspan out of Creighton. Can't really stretch the floor, doesn't shoot the free throw very well, but he's going to block everything. Very impressive highlights. Yannick Colin Niederhauser, somebody I like a lot as well at the center position, whose draft stock could potentially have him at the end of the first round. I like him a lot to play the center with some explosiveness, some energy, block shots as well. Hansen Yang is a player I like a lot in this draft, 7'1", center out of China. Can make plays for others, rebound the ball, who's improved his conditioning quite a bit, as we've talked about. Chaz Lanier, Tennessee Volunteer, 6'8", shooting guard who can really shoot the ball extremely well. Jameer Watkins is somebody I really liked a lot. I don't think I take him in the first round based on value, but I love his game a lot. Two-way, 6'7" guy out of Florida State. He is first-round value in my opinion. I think if you need a two-way guy that can pick and plug like Noah Penda, like some of these other guys that can play on both sides of the floor, you want Jameer Watkins on your team. Johnny Broome, power forward, 6'10", Auburn Tiger. I like him a lot. Older guy, senior, but can definitely help you at the power forward position. Bogoljub Markovic is a nice 6'11" power forward out of Serbia. He can stretch the floor some. Definitely like his overall ability to run the floor, play make. Really, really high upside guy. Definitely should be given a draft opportunity. And Kobe Brea, one of the best movement shooters in this draft. 6'7" out of Kentucky. Shooting guard there. Cam Jones is somebody who doesn't turn the ball over hardly. Playmaker, 6'5", good height, good weight for the shooting guard position. Definitely should be drafted in that second round. Some guys, man. And there was a lot of guys who went back to school. And that was the thing, man. And some of those guys, I'm not really sure if they're named here, so I don't want to get the wrong thing here going in regards to those names. But the point is, there's some dudes here, man. Alex Tui, 6'7", small forward out of Australia. I've heard a lot of good things about him. I don't think I saw any homework on him, but he's definitely someone I heard a lot of good things about. Sion James out of Duke, 6'6", shooting guard who can help you on both sides of the floor. So, yeah, man, this is a pretty solid draft, man. It does fall off a little bit. Micah Peavy, I've heard a lot of good things about. Shooting guard, small forward combination, 6'8", out of Georgetown. He's definitely somebody to take a look at in the second round. So, and Mark Sears. I don't want to forget about Mark Sears, although he's a shooter, 6'1", smaller guy, 6'1", out of Alabama. He is somebody who is really, really talented and definitely going to make a name for himself if drafted. So definitely do not sleep on Mark Sears, straightaway shooter. That dude is a laser. And last but not least, I'll mention Ryan Nembhard, because his brother's in the finals tearing stuff up. Andrew Nembhard, Ryan out of Gonzaga, 6 foot guard, a little short, but he can play both sides of the floor, can stretch the floor some, and he plays a lot like his bro. So that's what I will say, man. There's a lot of names back there too that I didn't mention. Nicholas Advidalas is somebody I want to mention. He can shoot the ball, but I think he might have went back to Greece. But he's an excellent shooter, 6'8", shooting guard, power forward guy. He definitely needs to be given a look if he stayed in this draft, though. He can shoot. So yeah, this is what it is, man. I just want people to know that this draft is pretty good. It's not amazing like a lot of people are saying it is, but there are some pieces here that if they fall to the right places can really overall raise their value. And so, yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this. I enjoyed making this. Obviously, I love doing this type of stuff. I did homework on all these players. I put a lot of time into doing this homework. So I appreciate everybody for supporting my 2025 mock draft. Of course, the NBA draft is on Wednesday of this upcoming week, and I will give you an exact date and time on that. And of course, it'll be spanning 2 days. The first day will be the first round, and the second will be the second round. So yeah, that's Wednesday, June 25th at 5 p.m. Pacific time, 8 p.m. Eastern at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, New York. And then Thursday, I believe the second round will be at the same time. It doesn't tell us exactly when that second one is. And I will let you know. Yeah, it's not telling me that at all. But it's going to be on the 26th at Barclays as well. So I believe that's at 5 o'clock. But yes, 5 o'clock both nights. 8 p.m. Eastern both nights. 25th and 26th back-to-back nights. Be there, be square, and we'll see how this mock draft matches with what we see in that first round, man. I don't think it's going to match. Most mock drafts don't. But, you know, it's one of those situations where you give it your shot and see what it ultimately becomes. So I think these teams are going to probably trade a little more than I have in mind here. I think you could potentially see a lot of stuff moved around over the next several days that will just blow up most mock drafts. But at the end of the day, I think if you see this draft done 7 times, I think you could see teams do something different 7 times. That's how vast this draft looks to me, based on how it's set up with the teams, their needs, and ultimately how many people feel differently about each and every player. So that's really what I gotta say, man. I appreciate everybody for sitting through this. My name is BDFFORTYFOUR. I thank you all for watching. I'm out.